You're listening to the Beat Motel Zine podcast, and we need to warn you that we use words like shit, bollocks, scrotics, fuck, anarcho-syndicalist, and cunt, and we don't normally beat those words out, apart from the word cunt, because we're not total animals. Now, we know as well as you that your children can hear these words on any street in Britain, possibly any street anywhere in the world, but we also appreciate that you may not want to invite these words into your home if you have children or sensitive pets nearby whilst listening to this podcast. So listener discretion is advised. That being said, if your children aren't allergic to hearing words like fuck, shit, buttocks or hind penis, they might learn something from listening to this podcast, although probably not, because the quality of our educational content is quite poor. So there you go, fuckers, buckle in and let's get started. Hey, you're back with Beat Motel. This is Andrew Culture. Sam, Dr. Sam, is still on tour, so I have a special guest today, and we're going to talk about music and stuff. So, special guest, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on. My name's Luke Littleboy, and I suppose contextually we should say we know each other from bands back in the day, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's why I asked you to introduce yourself, because I would have said Luke Captor or Luke Radiator.
Luke
Luke
Barshak was my brief. We had a brief foray into stage names. It was Jack Crucible and Luke Barshak, and it just never stuck. But Luke Barshak is my username on Reddit, and to this day is kind of my pseudonym online.
I didn't know with Reddit for years that you're not supposed to use like your actual name, so I'm on there as Andrew Culture, and everyone, is you're not supposed to like ever reveal it. It's like you're not supposed to tell anyone how much Bitcoin you've got, which is quite a simple thing for me to explain.
Yeah, it's one of those old Victorian rules. Don't discuss one's profession or how much Bitcoin one has.
See, when I found out I was going to say when you started using the name Luke Littleboy, you were born with it. When I found out that was your name, I assumed that was another stage name. Because it's cool as shit anyway. I mean, Luke Littleboy is such a punk rock name. It really sounds like you should be in an American skate punk band or something.
Yeah, you know what? I hated it at school because I was obviously bullied. And also, I'm only 5'6" now, fully grown.
I like the way you say now. Oh, fully grown. I think when you say now, it sounds like you're just waiting for like the last growth spurt to come in or something.
No, I've always been vertically challenged, as they say, and so yeah, that didn't help. And I guess if you're a girl in the family, it's kind of worse. But I actually have grown to love it because people remember Luke Littleboy, and there's something with the alliteration that I think works kind of well. So when we had our first one, I was sure to give her Lana Littleboy. That's her name. So I wanted that kind of alliteration. I thought it's kind of that Marvel Comics, Pepper Potts, or superhero Peter Parker. Kind of get that working in there somewhere.
It's going to mess up I'm going to say it mess up the post. Do you remember Luke from Junk Culture?
Yeah.
And his brother is shit. I've forgotten his brother's name. Oh my god. Anyway, there's 3 kids, and all their names start with L. So when post arrives, like L Smith,
no one
could be anyone.
We were a lot of my friends said we were going to give my second one a complex because he's Milo, so it's the first break from tradition. Because even my wife is Lex, goes by Lex, so it's Lex Littleboy, Luke Littleboy, Lana Littleboy, and then Milo. But it's still got the L in there. That's what I ascertained, so it still has a flow.
Oh no, it's absolutely still there. We ought to talk about music, really. Let's start with Riff of the Week. My glasses are really steamed up. I'm in the Studio B today rather than the usual Beat Motel studio. And my glass, it gets cold in here.
Yeah, you're the sauna room. Yeah.
The sauna room. Oh, my God. Sam, Dr. Sam, who usually runs this podcast with me, you'd know if you bumped into, he was part of the Punk News lot from Brighton. He lives in Finland, and everyone has a sauna. It's like the base level of is this a house or not is whether it's got a sauna.
I didn't know it was that prevalent.
I tell you, I went to the first metal festival. I went to a big metal festival called Tuska in Helsinki a couple of years ago, and there was bands like Merciful Fate, loads of black metal bands, and they built on-site saunas, or saunas they call them, because apparently Finns can't even go to a metal festival without having to go in a sauna.
They've probably got the right idea, though. That's we're more content with a cigarette shelter outside, and that's the bit. They probably got the right idea. Have a sauna.
Probably far, far healthier if it wasn't for all the depression and like midnight sun and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
there's that. Yeah.
Right, before I make everyone in Finland hate me, I'm going to play your riff of the week. Here it is.
Why can't I get just one fuck? Why can't I get just one fuck? I guess it's got something to do with luck, but I waited my whole life for just one day. After day, I get angry, and I will say that the day is in my sight when I take a bow.
So, Luke, who was that?
That was the Violent Femmes, one of my favourite ever bands, and I'm cheating on the riff of the week a little bit, I think, because it is just 2 chords, and that's the gag. That's what I wanted to. That's what I wanted to get across. But it's Violent Femmes, one of my favourite ever bands of all time. I discovered them a bit late. I was at university, so they sing about kind of teen angst and loneliness. So I discovered them a bit late for that. But I was really depressed in my first couple of years of uni, so it really a lot of the songs resonated with me on that level. And what I really love about the Violent Femmes is it's an acoustic guitar and an acoustic bass and like a snare drum. Or sometimes just an overturned, garbage can or rubbish bin, I should say. So I love the din and the noise that they kick up.
I like that it's also fairly on point for today's theme, which we haven't revealed yet. But shall I say, the Violent Femmes? I know the song that everybody knows by the Violent Femmes, but when I was preparing the clips for this, I thought, no, I really like this one as well. So
this is one of my favorites. Yeah, so Blister in the Sun is obviously the one that everyone knows, and I think in the States in particular, it has a bit of a reputation for being kind of like a frat boy anthem. So
really? God, I wouldn't get that from it at all.
No, but I think that's kind of, I mean, it's been used on adverts and that kind of thing. So I think that's kind of how it's developed over time. Whereas I think with that added up is a really good example of what the Femmes do well, which is it's not just the kind of punky side, but this is also a running theme through some of the other stuff I've picked. It's kind of got this jazz and country element as well. So it's just those two chords, but the bass player is desperately and the drummer as well is desperately trying to make it more interesting. So he's putting in all of these interesting fills. They break it up, they break it down. They just go down to drums. There's these bass runs going on. So and then you've got Gordon Gano's angsty screaming vocal over the top about how he just can't get a screw or a kiss or anyone to look at him at all. There's loads going on in the Femmes melting pot, if you like. But I really like that jazzy element of the Femmes. And although everyone talks about the first record, if anyone wanted to get into the Femmes, the second one, which is Hallowed Ground, is the alt country album, and that for me is where that's the zenith really of what they're able to do and what they're capable of doing. And after that, unfortunately, I'm such a big fan. I've got every single album, but they do get patchy after that. They're one of those ones that I stick with it, but they're not ones that you'd give to someone just to introduce them to.
God, there's so much about this I want to discuss. First of all, I've never been able to figure out how famous or how big Violent Femmes ever got, because to me, in my head, they're kind of like Six Music famous. They get played all the time on Six Music. Well, Blister in the Sun does, but also it's so weird that it was a frat boy song, because Blister in the Sun is such a sad song to me. It's desperate. It's got this real sort of air of desperation to it.
Yeah, they all do, and that's what I remember. Going through high. I mean, everyone relates to it on some level, right? But I remember going through high school and other people getting. I was kind of a late bloomer. I remember everyone getting girlfriends before me and stuff, and I remember feeling like I was like maybe frustrated by that, and that's why I love about the Violent Femmes, and we're going to come onto it as well with like spoiler alert, but the Descendants song later on.
I think the fact you called your son Milo is a spoiler that the Descendants are probably going to come up.
I know my son Milo was partially inspired by that first Descendants, well, the Descendants in general, but particularly that first one, of course, with the name. But so and going back to the 2 chords thing, I always like that famous Lou Reed quote where he kind of says 1 chord is fine, 2 chords is pushing it, 3 chords and you're into jazz. So I'm a big fan of anything that is. I remember when I was at university as well, I was suddenly getting obsessed with like minimalism. So I was getting into the bands like Half Japanese and things, and a lot of New York no wave, where I'm like, how much can you deconstruct music? At what point, there's no chords, there's no real notes. It's just kind of a din. And I found, particularly at that time, I found that kind of thing fascinating.
You ought to come along to one of our noise nights then that we put on, because a lot of that really is just a din, a glorious din in a wonderful way. When I was clipping this, I kept finding live versions of this song, and I was really surprised that the singer. What did you say the singer of the Violent Femmes' name was?
Gordon Gano.
He didn't look anything like I expected him to.
No?
At all. I don't know why. I expected him to look like Tom Verlaine.
Oh, yeah.
Or that sort of like, is he ill kind of look. But he looks healthy, he looks well fed, exercised. He looks in peak condition.
He always looks a little bit like Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day. I think he's got a similar kind of look, but he obviously looks very different these days. He's like so many of us do, has kind of grown in mass. But he was this really kind of like pint-sized singer, in the heyday in the 80s. Like he's this tiny little guy on stage, and he's a fascinating character as well, because his parents, or his dad, was a minister, so he came from this very Christian background. There's a lot of Violent Femmes songs that are pure. They've got this big gospel feel to them, and they're purely influenced by. They're very sincere. There's like Jesus walking on the water, for example, and I know the rest of the band didn't like them so much, but that they couldn't deny that they should record them because they were so good and catchy and interesting. And I kind of enjoy any with music. I kind of just enjoy song. I can separate the art from the artist very easily. I can often separate the subject matter. I really just enjoy, the how the song sounds, how it's put together, the melody, everything about it. And a lot of those Violent Femmes songs that are about purely about religion, are very, very sincere. And then on the other side of it, you've got him talking about how he, is desperate for a fuck or something. So I find that really interesting.
So I'm seeing some similarity. I mean, it's easy to say with almost any band I can see a similarity, or can see a lineage from Velvet Underground to this. But the religion thing's really interesting to me, because Velvet Underground got the song Jesus, which I picked as a song for an episode we did a little while ago. And with Lou Reed, I just don't know if it's heartfelt or if it's mocking. Just haven't even got a starting point for it at all. I
think a lot of artists, though, you kind of dabble, don't you? You dabble in stuff. And I think the Gordon Gano thing, obviously that came from his youth. With the Lou Reed thing, although I love the Velvets, I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of them, but if I know that that's the third record that he started singing about it and kind of discovered it. And it almost feels like a bit of a reaction to the first, drug-fueled album, the second just insane fuzzed out album, and then the third one is the chill out self-titled. It's even self-titled, isn't it? So it almost feels like starting again a little bit. You've got Doug Yule in there as a kind of who's coming for John Cale. So and it feels, and I wonder if a lot of us, you dabble in different things, different philosophers, or different styles of music, or different religions, and the Beatles are an obvious example of that, when you got George Harrison becoming a Buddhist and that kind of thing. So I suppose a bit of it's experimentation, right?
I think it pops up strangely in Jesus Mary Chain as well. I re-listened to Monkey, one of the 98, 99 album, and there's some quite overt religious stuff in there. But again, with them, to be honest, with Jesus Mary Chain, they probably did it because Lou Reed did it. I think you can probably trace a lot of Jesus Mary Chain decisions back to what those bracelets, like what would Lou do?
Yeah,
and I think that's a great thing. I love that kind of like admiring somebody's artistry through the filter of how somebody else perceives it.
Yeah, that's a really, really good way of putting it, actually. I don't know. I'm always of two minds. I'm not a religious person. But we've just moved back to the area I grew up in, and my wife is getting a lot of mileage with the kids out of the church groups for toddlers and that kind of thing. And there's a part of me that I actually think the community element of it is really good. So there's a part of me that thinks, man, if it was just about tombolas and coffee mornings, it would be really good. Like, it would be fine.
They just take the religious bit. I grew up going to church in Wicker Market. Sorry, listeners, I just say that because I know, I've known Luke a long time, and you all know where I mean. And it was a huge church, probably 200 or 300 people most weekends, and I've got nothing bad to say about growing up in this fantastic community of tombolas, potluck lunches, and bus trips to Lowestoft. Right, we ought to crack on to my riff of the week. This is I'm going to play it and then I'll explain it. Oh God, I hate that we can only play 30 seconds of anything, because just as I'm starting to get into the flow of something, it just stops dead like that. Do you want to have a guess who that was?
Wow. I wouldn't know where to begin, Andrew. No, go ahead. Give me a clue or something.
Well, that's a band called Blue Lake.
Blue. I do know Blue Lake. Yes.
I've never heard of them. I'm making my way through the Pitchfork Top 50 and writing reviews for the beatmotel.com website. And this album just absolutely grabbed me. Yeah, sometimes you can hear something and it's got you like instantly, which sometimes worries me, because sometimes if an album's so immediate, I tend to find that I won't be listening to it in a few months' time and then I'll just forget it exists. Yeah, I need to I feel like I need to work for some music. But I chose that as riff of the week because it's also really reminded me of like another big discovery, last person on the planet to discover, I think. Earlier this year, somebody played me Pentangle.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, this is fucking brilliant. You're like, gone from having kind of quite a closed-minded view of what folk music is to discovering and completely falling in love with Bert Jansch and just everything he does.
I need to. I do keep meaning to get into Pentangle because I think a mutual friend, Rocky, has recommended them to me a number of times and played me bits. I've always got a weird thing. I'm so open-minded with music. Folk is one that I really struggle to get into. There's a certain kind of alternative folk that I really like, but there's a lot of that 70s British stuff that I really struggle with. And my father-in-law is a big folkie, and he actually has his own radio show on on Felixstowe Radio. And it's called Roots and Shoots on a Monday, 7:00.
Good plug.
And it's so much of it I find. There's something about folk, because I think I always respond to, because I really like that blues, and anything that's really rootsy and soulful. And I kind of always like that, going back to that Violent Femmes thing, I always like someone kind of screaming in anger or screaming in with yearning. And I think with a lot of folk, there's a certain strand of it that I find is quite a little bit stilted. It's always,
it's a bit wet.
This is a performance of this folk song, and it's always a little bit sterile sometimes. But no, please go on. I'm riding over the Blue Lake thing, but I've definitely heard of them, and I will get into Pentangle.
I've got nothing else to. I don't know anything else about them at all. I purposely don't do any research before I listen to the tracks. I want to hear them.
Do you know how many records Blue Lake have got out or anything?
Not a clue. I literally couldn't. It could be one person. It could be 50. I know nothing.
It's one I'll check out because I've been trying to go through some of the Pitchfork records of the year, and it's a bit confusing actually because Pitchfork now they put a lot of pop records in there as well, don't they? These days.
Well, I've been really surprised. I'm only sort of 4 or 5 into it. I mean, the first one I listened to at number 50 was Andre 3000's Flute album.
Yeah, which I really enjoy.
Did you? I'm going to go back to it because it sounded a bit meandering to me. But having since learned the quality of some of the people who were involved with it, there was a guy, I loved Giles Peterson's show on Six Music on Saturdays. And he's interviewed some of the people who are involved in that album. Like, well, actually, the pedigree of the people involved is really high. It's not just one guy doing a nutty flute album. There's actually a hell of a lot of depth to it.
Yeah. I think the meandering thing it's one of those, you almost don't listen to that kind of thing. You have to kind of let it wash over you a bit, I find. Because I've been getting into, I had my Spotify Wrapped this year, and it's the first year where like my genre wasn't sort of classic rock or punk. My top genre was jazz. I think it's a little bit skewed because I'm probably falling asleep to it and that kind of thing, which is probably like skewing the data.
I'm sure the artists are really thrilled. Like, exactly.
Well, they're all dead. The estates of the artists are thrilled. But I think it took me a while to understand that with jazz, that there's bits that you listen to quite intently, and then there's bits that you just kind of feel, which I know sounds a bit wanky, but until you've kind of sussed it out. I think that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, with you entirely. So just to wrap up on Pentangle, if you just do a search on YouTube for Pentangle 4K, there's just a really nice little bits of a studio session they did in, I think, about 1970. But it's weird. I'm still weirded out by 4K stuff of old things, because it looks like someone's dressed up in 60s clothes and recorded something now.
Yeah, it freaks me out. It really does. Like the Beatles Get Back thing was a bit like that, wasn't it? And there's loads of people doing it now, because a lot of that software is quite available, isn't it? So one of the things I on Instagram, I follow a lot of these historic feeds where this is Paris in 1890, and it's colorized, it's stabilized, and it looks freaky as hell. That
Love it.
Why isn't it? Why isn't everyone dressed in black and white? I don't understand.
Final Pentangle thing. The album that turned me on to sort of the Bert Jansch thing there's an album called Avocet, which is just drums, acoustic guitar, and double bass.
It's a good bird choice, by the way. Avocet. Good bird choice.
It's very kind of Suffolky bird choice as well, isn't it? Right, so we ought to move on to the theme. So the theme this week is it was born from you, Luke. So I'm going to leave it to you to explain.
Sure. So I went for this randomly, honest love songs, and after I picked it, I then realised that how difficult it was to find honest love songs, because I didn't actually tell you the full brief. I had my own little brief in my head, which was it can't be a breakup song, because they're kind of two. That's fine. Don't worry about that. This is my own personal challenge that I set myself. I thought, it can't be a breakup song because they're kind of, 10 a penny that they're easy to come by. It needs to be, sort of, and it also can't be when you've just fallen in love with someone. Because I always remember as a kid, you don't understand all those stupid pop love songs and all the stuff from the 60s about I love you, you love me, da 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 da, like how silly. And then I remember falling in love for the first time when I was a teenager, and suddenly all of those songs made complete sense. But they're not honest love songs, because it's kind of infatuation, right? So I was trying to go for stuff that was maybe you're in the relationship or about to be in the relationship, but it's a very honest take on it. And I didn't go, my favorite band of all time is the Beach Boys, but I didn't pick the obvious one, which is God Only Knows, which has the opening line, I may not always love you, but as long as there are stars above you, God knows what I'd be without you. And it's that kind of thing that I was thinking is where you're kind of being honest with someone about how you feel. You can't always be in love the whole time, but that love has changed and evolved into something else. And then I realized how difficult that is. There are so few songs actually that are in that mold, and I never gave you any of that information.
No, I'm glad you didn't, because I'd be really struggling. It took me quite a while, but part of the reason I like doing this themed thing is that me and Sam always have a different approach to it. And we always have our own rules, so I'm quite pleased with that, because my set of rules on it were just trying to similar thing, like trying it not to be infatuation. I didn't quite do the no breakups thing.
No, that's fine.
But I gave it a lot of thought, and when we come to that, I'll explain why I chose the one I did.
Music was invented to articulate breakups. It's fine.
Right. Well, let's have your first song. Again, that just
I wasn't sure what bit to go for. I remember I gave you the timestamps, and I was like, "Do we go for the big chorus, which is great because we're equal but different, you're equal but different, and again, or do I try and get the verse lyrics in, which kind of articulate some of the themes of the song?" So I opted for the latter, but at the expense of the really wicked chorus. But that was the Au Pairs. I first came across them again when I was at uni. I had all like the rough trade. I did a student radio show. And of course, this was CDs. There was no streaming, so I could buy loads of compilation records, so I could play lots of different things. And I had all the rough trade ones. And this was on Rough Trade Punk, Volume 1. I don't think there was ever a Volume 2, but I discovered the Au Pairs on there. So I also discovered the Violent Femmes actually on Rough Trade Country. So this was the track that was on there was called You, which is a bit more of a punky, traditional punky number. But what I loved when I finally got into the band in the streaming era, because I never got around to buying a record, but then in the streaming era, I could catch up with some of the stuff that I thought I've never have the money to buy all the discography or whatever. So then I listened to the first album, Playing with a Different Sex, which is in itself just a wicked title, really provocative.
Yeah.
You've got an awesome cover with these armed women from the People's Liberation Army in China. And what I love about the Au Pairs, and what I love about a lot of post-punk stuff as well, is it's a bit provocative and it's a bit ambiguous as to what any of it means, and you can interpret it all. And It's Obvious is a really good example. So it's kind of the centerpiece of the album. It's the longest song. And again, a bit like the Violent Femmes Add It Up, it's very jazzy. You heard the beginning there, how it kind of builds up with the bass and the drums. You've got these dueling guitars, which are very staccato and abrasive. And there's whole sections that there's some brass at one point, and the guitar and the brass kind of duels. And when I was in the Waxing Captors, that was the sort of thing, like unconsciously we would have those sort of things in songs as well, just for fun. So I think a lot of that resonates with me. But the actual point of the song, I don't know what it's about, and I've tried looking online as well, and it really is open to interpretation. The way I've always interpreted it is it's two people having a very honest discussion around we've been together for some time, and I like that you do this and I do that, and that's what we bring to the relationship. So and some of it's very silly. So she talks about cooking, he cooks the breakfast or something, and I mean, she was gay, so she was probably talking about a woman, but you cook the breakfast and I do this, and it's paradise, but it's got this very deadpan thing, so you're not sure if they like it or not. Like, are they bored? Are they in the relationship? Are they not?
Cool. It could be like a pre-breakup then.
It could be, yeah. But then the chorus is saying, we're equal but different. It's obvious. And I think, to me, what that's saying is, it's so obvious that this is, to kind of be equal in a relationship is the way to do it. Why would you have this sort of power struggle of the sexes, or why would one person be trying to get one up over the other? And that's the way I've always interpreted it anyway. Now, someone else could, I'm sure, turn around and say, but what about that lyric about so-and-so? And you completely, you completely misinterpreted it, got it the wrong way. But I actually was just looking here. Nowadays, you cook eggs, equal breakfast. And again, in bed, it's nice. But actually at the end it is a little ambiguous, because it kind of ends on a bit of a mundane thing where she says, nowadays I wash sheets, send a buck, scrub my back for me, that's paradise. So whether she's then saying that's bad or that's good, that they seem to, everyone's bringing their own thing to the relationship, I don't know, but I love it. And what I love about it is it's got this, it's a bit of disco, and it's a bit of jazz, and it's a bit of punk, and I love all that kind of menagerie of stuff.
I think one of the real joys of that sort of era of post-punk is that punk had come out in this country. I really see like American punk in the 70s and British punk as two completely separate things. But the British punk, a lot of it was, we're angry and this is why, and this is exactly, and it's quite straight up. I mean, Subhumans, it's, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like this. I get it. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's incredibly clear. And then post-punk, I was listening, they played Orange Juice on the radio this morning. I think Edwyn Collins' lyrics always fascinate me, because I don't really know what he's talking about, but I get sort of a vibe for it. So exactly, post-punk was a bit more kind of like, look, we're still angry, but we're not going to explain why. That's kind of our thing.
And I think a lot of post-punk stuff, because it was more kind of intellectual, wasn't it? It was more kind of art school or whatever.
It was more generous to the listener.
And again, I think a lot of it's like, we're going to put these ideas out there, and it's up to you to interpret them. And what do you think about them? And putting the onus on the listener, which I love. It's how I discovered authors or whatever. So much of it is through music. When people are name checked.
Oh God, yeah. Loads of authors like Ian Banks. I'd literally go and look up a band if they get mentioned. Have you read Espadare Street? I've asked a few people this recently.
No, I haven't. No.
Do you know who I mean? Ian Banks.
I know. Yeah, I know Ian Banks. Yeah,
he wrote a book. I think it's his least popular or least selling book, but it's called Espadare Street, and it's written about the bassist in a band who was in. I've not figured out what band it is, because obviously it's fiction, but he's sort of living his life after having been in this massive band, and I think anyone who's in a band would enjoy it. It's really good fun, and it's poignant. It's a typical Ian Banks book, but Espedere Street. There goes. We're getting culture now. I'm giving book recommendations. I'm going to play my choice, and I was really pleased when I saw your choices coming through because I've not tried to pair them, but there's a. I'm just going to play it. I can't believe I'm trying to explain it and I haven't played it yet. Here we go. So, do you know who that was?
No, who's that?
That's the Replacements.
Great. Yeah, I do. I've got the first. I've got up to Let It Be. I think the first two, and the first album. Sorry, Ma, I forgot to take out the trash. I bought as a kid and Out of Time. I do love the Replacements. Yeah.
Let It Be is just brilliant. Favorite thing on Let It Be has got the best bass sound I've ever heard. But the progression of the albums after that was it was slightly fucked up by Simon. So Simon in These Are End Times, who Luke as well. When he said, "Do you know what? Later era Replacements, I can't tell the difference between that and Bon Jovi." And I was like, "Fuck's sake, he's right." It's awful. But I'm glad I chose that because with the Violent Femmes and the Au Pairs, you talked about kind of the stripped down thing, the sort of the making it basic, and that song Answering Machine was at a period in the Replacements trajectory where I think they're on Sire by then. So, they had the opportunity for the really big production, and they just strip it right back. And that guitar tone, for one thing, is very 80s. It's all chorusy, but it's actually quite scratchy and unpleasant. It's not nice, it's not got the guitars went very smooth with Nirvana.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That Replacement song is just not, but I chose it because we're talking about honest love songs. There's a definite angst to it, but it's not an angle that I think gets expressed in many songs, because it's clearly really love you, but I'm really fucked off that for whatever reason they can't spend time together. And I mean I always read it as Paul Westerberg on tour trying to stay in touch with a girlfriend or whatever.
He's talking about an answer phone and that kind of thing. Did I get that?
I mean that bit's dated a bit, but
well, yeah, but you can. It's obviously he's trying to keep in touch at a distance,
But but why? It's weird. I've literally just thought for the first time, and I've known this song for God knows how long. Why isn't he ever getting through to her?
Well, yeah, that's true. But I guess back then, if you were out.
I'm saying it's dated, but I'm now trying to think. No, they wouldn't have had caller ID, so you couldn't ghost somebody on the phone in the 80s because the phone rang and you picked it up or you didn't. It could be anyone.
Yeah, you just had. Yeah, if you were trying to ghost someone, you had to let it go to answer machine every time. So maybe that's what you're
call
saying.
Screening. We used to call that call screening when you'd hear the person's voice. But yeah, so that's probably a bit sadder than I thought it was, that song, because he's being ignored.
Yeah,
I love the teenage desperation of Replacements. Just it's so angry and frantic on the first album, and Let It Be starts to get a bit of heart into it, and it's got the weird choice, I think, of having a Kiss cover on it, Black Diamond, which I didn't know was a Kiss cover for years.
No, nor did I for years. Yeah, you're right.
But it's, despite what Simon said, it is worth listening to the rest of the album.
I will do. It's one of those things that we're in the age of streaming now, and I can catch up on this stuff, and sometimes I still don't somehow get round to it because there's so much other stuff. But I will listen to the rest of it, and I still prefer buying records, and I think on some level that's why I'm probably going down like a jazz rabbit hole. And I'm probably not going to buy loads of stuff, so I'll listen to all this stuff and soak it up. Whereas with the Replacements, in my mind, I'm still thinking I'm still going to buy the last few records at some point. And do you know what I mean? So that's probably
I'd still buy them on vinyl. I'd still want them on vinyl.
Yeah.
But Bob Stinson, the bassist Tommy's brother, died. He was already out of the band by then because they just couldn't cope. The book's amazing. Lemon Jail, and I can't remember what the other one's called. I think it's called something stupid like Boys in the Band. But they're brilliant. They were such a chaotic mess, kind of mess. It's bundled in with the Replacements in lots of. I didn't realize how bad things were, like very very bad. But anyway, when they booted out I forgot his name. Bob Stinson. They got a country guitarist in, a guy called Slim, which is about as country as a guitarist they can get, I think.
Definitely.
Slim. But yeah,
Did they start playing like slide guitar? Like, did that get adopted into the sound and stuff?
Oh, that's a good question. There's a little bit, but the whole playing style is. I've got this thing going on in my life at the moment that country music is. I just cannot. It's just calling me all the time.
Yeah, it's good because Jack. So in the Waxing Captors, the band I was in, Jack, who's the sort of the band leader really and the songwriter, he massively got into country in the sort of latter period of the band, and he's still in his solo stuff. That's kind of still his shtick is the singing cowboy. It's sort of very tongue in cheek, but the songs themselves are fantastic. And but he got me into like Hank Williams and all that stuff. And there's definitely a punk element to it. I always relate things back to punk because one of the reasons I like jazz is because punk's got this experimentation. A lot of, not all punk, but some punk has this experimentation and pushing the boundaries, and that jazz has that in spades. But also the big thing about country is 3 chords and the truth. That's what they say, and that's what I love about so much of that stuff from that era in particular. Like the commercial stuff these days, I struggle with a little bit more. This big stadium rock country stuff is a bit different, but a lot of that stuff from the rootsier bits from the 50s and 60s, I think, and that Nashville sound and going into the 70s is great fun.
They all blend together. The sort of folk, Americana, blues, jazz. I was about to say, it's all music. So on that revelation, let's play the next song.
Charlie, I'm pregnant, living on 9th Street, right above a dirty bookstore off Euclid Avenue. Now stop taking dope, I quit drinking whiskey. My old man plays the trombone.
Oh God, I'm sorry, Tom.
Well, it's difficult because the song is long. That's Tom Waits, A Christmas Card from a Hooker in Minneapolis. And so Tom Waits, I do have every Tom Waits album on CD, and I kind of I'm refusing to buy any of it on vinyl. It's all being reissued on vinyl now, remastered, and I'm like, fuck this. Selling me the same thing again, you bastard. So I've got my CDs, that I suppose they're not all original pressings, but they're all kind of from the 90s and 2000s, and that's that. So but yeah, that's from, so obviously any Tom Waits fan knows that there's kind of, and any music fan probably knows there's broad eras of Tom Waits. You've got the kind of jazzy, bluesy nightclub singer era in the 70s. You've got the vaudeville on acid kind of macabre era of the 80s on Island Records, and then you've got when he was on Epitaph and he did the kind of I suppose more like alt country but really insane bluesy stuff later on. And I love all the eras, and a lot of hardcore fans would probably maintain that the first era, the jazzy one, is not the coolest one, but that is from that era. And it's from one of my favorite albums of that era. It's a later album. It's called Blue Valentine. It's got like a West Side Story cover on there and stuff. Like it's a very kind of string-led album. So it's very smooth and stuff. But what I love about that song is it is literally written as a letter from a hooker in Minneapolis. And she's obviously writing to her guy, Charlie. And I love his delivery. Just, Charlie, I'm pregnant. You could say anything as Tom Waits. My wife will often say, what are we having for breakfast? You can say anything. And I'm going to make you some French toast with some baked beans on the side. I love saying things like you're Tom Waits. And, but he, and so the whole thing's written like that. So he was saying that I'm pregnant. I'm living on 9th Street above a dirty bookstore. I've stopped taking dope. I've quit drinking whiskey. And now the guy I'm with now, he plays the trombone and he works out at the track. I'm doing really well. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. And it's clearly Charlie's baby because he says in the second verse, he says he's going to love me. He says he's going to love me even though it's not his baby. And it goes on about how well she's doing. And she's moved on. And so it sounds like it's a post-breakup record. And but the punchline is right at the very end. And she says, Charlie, for Christ's sakes, if you want to know the truth of it, I don't have a husband, and he don't play the trombone. I need to borrow money to pay for this lawyer. And Charlie, I'll be eligible for parole come Valentine's Day. So she's written to him at Christmas. Obviously, parole's coming up for Valentine's Day. And what I adore is clearly Charlie is the only person she could write to is this ex-boyfriend. And even though it didn't work out and clearly they don't like each other very much to the point where she wanted to lie to him a bunch, she's just decided he's kind of my best bet. And why don't we just get it on again on Valentine's Day? Like, I love it. So it kind of works. Obviously, in a 30-second snippet, it doesn't quite work, but the whole gag works really well when you're listening to the sort of 4 or 5 minutes of it. And there's some really, really awesome lyrics about all the things that she'd. So she says, "I wish I'd spend all the money we used to spend on dope." Again, like really trying to like get the knife in there to say, "I'm so glad we're not together anymore because of all these things we did that was stupid. If I had all the money that we spent on dope, I'd buy me a used car lot and I wouldn't sell any of them. I'd just drive around in a different car every day, depending on how I feel." But he sings it with this ballady voice. It's just awesome. I love that song.
It's so magical. I mean, I've not really sort of dived.
Divin? I don't know.
I've not dived into Tom Waits, but every time I hear it, again, it's one of those Six Music things. Whenever Tom Waits comes with Six Music, I'm always really pleased it does. Yeah, I need to dig into that. I don't tend to aim for bleak music, but there's sort of a weird humour in Tom Waits. I can do bleak if it's a sort of a self-aware bleakness. You know, it's that kind of, I know I'm being really bleak here. Like Nick Cave does a similar thing as well. I'm kind of all right with that for some reason.
I think I struggle with anything too serious. If anything takes itself seriously, I worry about that sometimes. I think, am I a serious person? Because if music takes itself seriously, I just can't stand it. But if music has a sense of humor to it, because sometimes I think to myself, do I just like comedy songs? Is that all I really? Do I only like novelty songs? Is that it? But yeah, Tom Waits. Yeah, he's obviously bleak and dark, but it's always funny.
I say I don't like bleak stuff. I love black metal, and that's not exactly cheerful. Well, you can't tell. The singing's just. Oh dear. Right, let's move on. I'm afraid I had to go for a really obvious one, and it is. I won't be offended if you roll your eyes, but if you're going to have a song about relationships, then this band had to be on it.
Stress, I need a caress, what do I get? On the make, I just need a break. What do I get? What do I get? Oh, what do I get? What do I get? Oh, what do I get? I only get sleepless nights alone here in my haunted bed. Be just in the time I try.
So the Buzzcocks with What Do I Get? And I put so much thought into which Buzzcocks song to choose. And I chose that one because I can't figure out if he's got what he wanted. Like he's in a relationship now, but it turns out that the teenage dream of what a relationship is very different to the reality of a relationship.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I've got a girlfriend now, which I really, really wanted, and now I can't sleep, and now everything's shit, kind of.
Yeah, I tell you, the obvious ones are obvious for a reason because they're awesome. So don't worry about that. I always think that about music. I always think the stuff that often shuffles its way to the top is there for a reason. You know, it resonates with a lot of people, or it is particularly well constructed. I love the Buzzcocks. I love that tune. I've always thought it's. I think you're right on with the interpretation because I've always seen it as I don't know the Buzzcocks disco. I mean, I've got singles going steady. That's kind of it. So I don't really know the chronology. Of the singles or where they came on, the first record, Love Bites or whatever. But I've always seen it as a sequel to Ever Fallen in Love with Someone You Shouldn't Have Fallen in Love With, which people often mispronounce as that you should have fallen in love with. But no, it's definitely about falling in love with someone that you should not have fallen in love with. And I've interpreted the same as you, that he probably wanted a girlfriend, shouldn't really fall in love with this particular person, is with them, and then what do I get? I only get sleepless nights and all this depression, and it's not working out.
Yeah. So yeah, bleak.
I love. God, they really are good, Buzzcocks. I know. Again, I'm making an obvious point, but pop punk didn't exist. It was new. And I know we're going to get onto the Descendants later as well. But the bands now that have based their whole careers, on these other groups, unreal.
There were two standouts when I started to get into punk, which was just because I'd started college and the band I was in, they were all going off to university, and that just wasn't an option for me. So I just went to college, and there was this punk on the bus, and I just befriended him because, well, I'll talk to fucking anybody. And he said, I want to start a punk band. And I was like, oh, all I knew of punk was, well, nothing at all. So he made me a tape. And the two standouts on the whole tape was Suspect Device by Stiff Little Fingers. And I can't remember I might have been Boredom, actually.
Yeah.
And I can remember just going, this is it. This is all the stuff that I'd been avoiding punk because of. Stiff Little Fingers and the Buzzcocks solved.
Yeah, exactly.
They literally fixed it. I went, oh no, well, this is really cool.
Yeah, and that's very early, but it's the first Buzzcock single, isn't it? It's the DIY one with Howard DeVoto.
Spiral Scratch. Right, let's move on to, well, you just mentioned them. Let's play them.
I don't know why it's so, but it's true. I don't know why it's so, but it's true. I don't know why it's so, but it's true. I don't know why it's so, but it's true. I don't want to have sex with you. I want to be your friend. I want to be with you. I want you to marry me.
I have a shameful confession to make to you, Luke.
Go on.
3 years in a row, I cycled to Antwerp to go to a festival called Brack Rock, which is a sort of a skate punkish sort of. I think of it as like a Fat Wreck. Yeah, I think like 2/3 of the bands there were on Fat Wreck. And the last year we went, Descendants were headlining, and we went home before they played.
I've screwed up. I've never managed to see them, and I've kind of had opportunities as well. But I mean, they're not a band I listen to loads, but I definitely obviously listened to them a load when I was younger. Jack, again, in the Captors, he introduced me to them because Jack's dad had a huge record collection, and that kind of informed a lot of the Waxing Captors because we were 13, 14 when we were starting the group up, but we had this huge treasure trove of stuff that his dad listened to that Jack was into. Descendants was one, and at that point I kind of only knew Green Day and stuff and Offspring, and then I realized, so it comes from this. And I think Jack had kind of challenged me to, because I wasn't a very good singer, so I think he challenged me to sing like Milo, where he was like, it's kind of screamy and throaty, but it's got a bit of melody to it. So that was I don't think I achieved that even remotely closely, but nevertheless, the album was awesome. And then I bought it in Ipswich myself from Rex Records. Don't look for it; it's not there. And that first record was awesome. And I've bought a few of them since then, and I've enjoyed some of the new stuff to a degree. But anyway, the reason I picked that one was it's called Marriage, and it's not really infatuation. He's definitely singing as a young kid, but I think the reason I picked that particular snippet was he was saying, I don't want to have sex with you. I want to be your friend. I want you to marry me. And I think it's that confusion of, I don't just fancy this person physically or want to kiss them or snog them or whatever. I actually really want to spend more time with them and get to know them better and marry them. Now, I don't know if it's completely, if it's a bit of infatuation, maybe they ought not get married because they're far too young to understand what that entails. But what I love about it is it's one of the reasons I also like the Beach Boys, and the Descendants don't always do this that well. Some of it's a bit more questionable, but like Beach Boys and Weezer. And whenever I heard on one of your episodes, you guys might do a Weezer episode one day. I'd love to do that. I always love that. Often they in those songs, like they put the female is kind of put on more of a pedestal, and it's the male is singing from a position of weakness, which you don't always get, in kind of a traditional song. So I think with that Descendants tune, it's a little bit like that. He's kind of saying, I almost don't understand these feelings, and I don't understand you and how you're making me feel this way, but I just want to be your friend. I don't necessarily want to have sex with you. I want to get to know you better, and I think we should get married. I find that a very sweet and kind of sincere sentiment.
I love it. For me, it's a perfect snapshot of several times, and I'm not going to mention any names. Friends of mine have broken up from long-term relationships with the reason that we were just best friends who had sex. And I was thinking,
right,
what were you aiming for? what did you? We love spending time together. Just we're talking to the night, had great sex life. We were just like best friends. Like, What do you think there is? Do you think there's like another level where like, oh, and sometimes we could levitate, or I learned how to fucking fly,
Yeah, I know
or
what you
something
mean.
like? What
That's
are you
a really
aiming
good way of
for?
putting it. I always I always try to appreciate very, very simple life, um my wife and I are never so happy as when we're just, you know, I know it sounds cheesy, but you know, walking along a windswept, wintry Suffolk beach, let's say, having a pint and a scone and going home. Do you know what I mean? I always think there is nothing. Life isn't complicated. I know obviously there's lots of other factors that come into play, like kids and money and whatever. But I always think life's actually not that hard. You know, you're going to be dead pretty soon. So just enjoy the simple stuff, because there ain't nothing else really. Like there's unless you've got like reams of money and can afford to do like have all these different experiences. Like life is basically, whoa, sorry, incoming.
Oh no,
calls.
you're for that.
Life is basically incoming calls and the odds gone.
Oh, it's wonderful. I need to listen to more Descendants. It's one of those bands that. Do you have any bands who, like, on paper you should love, but you've just never quite clicked with? That everything about the Descendants I should be absolutely obsessed with. But
well, there's been a few obvious ones recently. I'm now 36, and I've suddenly decided that although that's not ancient, I've suddenly decided there's certain things I can stop pretending about. So I've always just thought, yeah, the Rolling Stones are great. There's nothing wrong with the Rolling Stones. I like the Rolling Stones. And I've tried to listen to records and that, and I've just decided, you know what? I'm just not that into the Rolling Stones.
No, I don't get it.
I don't get them at all. And there's been a few groups like that recently where I've just decided, you know, I don't have to pretend I respect the Rolling Stones, because I don't.
I quite like not liking them, because it means I can appreciate the second tier Rolling Stones bands. You know, the bands really clearly influenced on a more sort of pure level. Like there's several Charlatans albums which are clearly massively influenced by the Rolling Stones. And if I really loved the Rolling Stones, it would detract from the enjoyment of the Charlatans.
Yeah.
I don't like the source material. I just like the reinterpretation. I think I get more out of it that way.
Yeah, totally get it.
Right, let's have another choice. I'm afraid we are into a slightly different vibe here now with my choices. Final thing I want to say about the Descendants, I love the fact we had a philosophical discussion after playing the Descendants. I think I see them as like the academic branch of punk.
Yeah.
in a very good way. I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
So let's have a bit of this.
Silence is a weapon. It's like a nuclear bomb. It's like the Agent Orange they used to use in Vietnam. And it's a comforting by an apathy that's deafening to the ears. You know it is complete and perfect, and you wield it without fear.
Do you know who that was?
Was that John Grant?
That's John Grant with Vietnam, from the Pale Green Ghosts album. And we've sort of gone through several phases of relationships and love here. And that's not a breakup song, I don't think, but I think it probably is like a minute or two before the breakup conversation. But it's just so damning. It's so fucking brutal. And it's unpleasant. He's being unpleasant. It's not a nice thing to talk about, but the other person sounds far worse.
I really like John Grant. I wasn't aware of his group, the Czars, that he was in before.
No, nor was I.
No. Well, I got into the first solo record, King of Denmark.
It's Queen of Denmark. I mean, I don't want to be a pedant.
No,
on
a
podcast riddled with inaccuracies.
Yeah, sorry about that. It had a sticker on it saying the first solo album from singer in the Czars, unless I've got that wrong as well. But and I remember thinking I wasn't aware of that group, but I've obviously kept up with him. He's kind of become a Six Music darling and stuff since.
Six Music.
I love
famous.
all of those records, and Greatest Motherfucker is obviously a really good tune as well, which is another. He obviously thinks a lot of himself, but I also enjoyed that.
That song's the complete opposite. Well, that's my interpretation. It's the total opposite of that.
Oh, okay.
It's somebody mocking somebody else's high opinion of them and saying, like, look, deep down, that is not how I feel. I feel the complete opposite. I don't know what it is that people see in me as being great when I feel absolutely horrible. Well, that was my interpretation.
Oh no, great! I should listen to it closer. I've always thought of it as he's just saying to someone, let's get together. Because I'm not perfect, but I'm still kind of the greatest motherfucker you'll ever meet, you know. And but I'll listen to it again a bit more closely. But I love him. I love his dour delivery and sarcastic lyrics and all that kind of thing.
If I could choose how to sing, if I could sing, I think it would be John Grant. That would be what I'd go for. You know, I'd go for a slightly punkier voice for fun, but John Grant, you know, the punkier, shoutier, proper screamy voice would be the one night stand, and the singing like John Grant would be the lifelong commitment kind of marriage thing. But that whole album is, I'm pretty sure it's a breakup album.
Right, yeah.
And well, Adele has sort of made a career out of breakup albums, and I think John Grant just does it with a bit more bitterness and bile.
Did you ever do any like backing vocals and Junk Culture and stuff and Zeeb? Have you ever
Zeeb? I sung. I did backing vocals for everything, but there are a couple of Zeeb tracks where I do pretty much do the lead vocal in a very very narrow range. Like really really narrow, and doing well. One of them took me so long to sing it in tune, we named it 46 takes. How many takes it took me with poor old our producer, poor Ian Crow, very patiently just kind of go again.
Oh, bless. Yeah, there's nothing worse than that as a singer, is there? Or a singer that can't sing, because I'm a singer that can't sing, and having to be in the studio and
I feel like I should correct you when you say that.
What's that?
I feel the need to correct you when you say that, because again, it's based on whose judgment. Because no, you don't sing like John Grant. You don't sing like Botticelli. Do I mean Botticelli? No, you don't. You're not like an opera singer.
No,
but you are a Luke singer.
That's very kind of you to say, and that is true. And people have said that to me before, and I wasn't just fishing. But all I'm saying is, I can honestly say I have been in the studio for take after take after take after take, trying to get punched into a particular section to hit it. So it's better live. I always prefer singing live, because obviously it just doesn't matter. It's great.
First time I was ever in a studio, it was with Pat Alexander at Soundback. And I think I was 17 or 18, and I was so terrified of that man that he kept punching me in to do my vocal take. And I got a word wrong, and I said, "Oh, fuck it!" And he was like, "Was that all right? Was that the one?" And I was so scared of him, I just went, "Yes." So,
I always thought he was a little cuddly teddy bear. We did our first record with Pat when we were 15.
He means a lot to a lot of people.
Right.
Oh shit! There's video for this, isn't there? Right. Let's go on to what I think was the choice of yours that. It surprised me so much that when you sent over your list of songs, you said, "Is this going to be too controversial?" And I literally couldn't see it. I couldn't see anything in the list that I thought, well, no, there's nothing shocking there. And then you messaged back going, "What about this band?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, let's play it and then talk about it."
Like it didn't say hello. There will not be a send-off, a funeral, or mass, just a pathetic little vodka from a dirty little glass to the world's greatest mom, from the oldest swinger in town. Let love speak up as
Too brutal. Come on, Luke, who was that?
So that's the Beautiful South, which my dad loves music, but he's got very different sort of taste to me. And the Beautiful South in the 90s, as I was growing up as I would have been 8, 9, 10, and going into I was sort of 10 to 11 by the time at the end of the decade. The Beautiful South to me are long car journeys and family holidays, sitting in the back seat, and a bit like Paul Simon's Graceland would have been to the 80s as the Beautiful South were to the 90s, if you like. So there's certain things that I haven't taken with me, like I don't listen to the Lighthouse Family, for example. But exactly,
I would have vetoed the Lighthouse Family.
But I really got into the Beautiful South because I picked up on the fact that the lyrics were very sarcastic, and as a child I always figured out that the syrupy sweet instrumentation and then the barbed lyrics were the gag. And I always think a lot of people didn't necessarily get that or want to get it. also the gag was done to, I mean, they did record after record after record after record, so the gag was kind of done to death. You know, you maybe only need a couple of LPs of that, and he knew, Paul Heaton knew that. You know, he when he broke the band up, he cited musical similarities as the reason. It's the reason for breaking up, and that sense of humor to me is so. I love Paul Heaton, and obviously as I then got into, okay, there's the House Martins and this kind of white boy soul, and I love his politics, you know, and he, you know, very, very kind of left wing politics that he has throughout his lyrics, but particularly in the House Martin stuff and some of the newer solo stuff he does. So yeah, the Beautiful South is probably a bit too much of it, but the first 3 or 4 Beautiful South records, I think, before they then became massive and did carrying up the charts and started doing like arenas and that kind of thing, I think a really good kind of indie records, and that one is from the second album, Choke. The big one on that album that people probably know is what's the big hit? It's A Little Time, which is their which is a really good breakup song. Would have been a really good breakup song, and but that one is Let Love Speak Up Itself. It's got a really good video, which is just looks like a wedding. It's like a wedding home movie, and it's the reason I picked it is I don't think they've quite broken up yet. I think it's getting close to it. They've had a big row. But the lyrics, I think, are truly the most honest love lyrics. And it's kind of a philosophy I try to live with, that you can't just live by big gestures or giving a big talk about why you love someone so much. You have to let love speak up itself. And you do that by just your actions and how you live day to day. And I love the lyric. My favorite lyric is, it will not say goodbye, just like it didn't say hello. He's talking about love, obviously, and he says, "Don't whisper love." And he says that. So when you feel, he says, "We'll not say goodbye, just like it didn't say hello. There will not be a send off, a funeral or mass, just a pathetic little vodka in a dirty little glass."
I love that line. That's brilliant.
To the world's greatest mum from the oldest swinger in town. So he, you know, and before you know, I've been through breakups as well, and before you know it, you don't realize that the other person's fallen out of love with you or something. You know, sometimes you could be oblivious to it, and before you know it, you are drinking yourself stupid, thinking, where the hell did it all go wrong? And so for me, that the sentiment about just let love itself do the talking, and try to live every day like that, and you know, show respect to the other person, that kind of thing, is what I try. I'm not saying I achieve it, but what I try to live by.
It's been a lovely recording, this has. It's been really nice. Beautiful South are one of those bands. It's a list of bands that people always expect me to hate, and I'm always really curious about how people form opinions of my tastes based on stuff. I wasn't a fan of the music at the time, but again, because I was just a stupid indie kid. But the more I learned about Paul Heaton and the way that the House Martins built themselves, how they came about, and the way he ran Beautiful South, is just there's nothing to dislike.
No, because he should have had all the songwriting
good
credits, obviously, but he gave all the money equally between the 6 or 7 members, because he said, well, everyone has a job, so without any one individual, the band wouldn't be what it is. So he gave it out equally, and you know, he's done a lot of that since. I know this is a silly example, but when Q magazine closed, not that I like Q magazine at all, but obviously they'd probably done him a solid over the years, and I think he gave just this huge payout to all the journalists that weren't going to have a payout because it had gone into liquidation. He just gave them a lot of money, and it's gestures like that. And in the pandemic, you know, when it kind of cleared, he promised that he would do this big concert for purely just doctors and nurses and frontline workers, which he did. Yeah, I love, and I don't know how true the story is, but I've definitely read some articles where this was in the height of austerity in the 2010s. He tried to give his Beautiful South royalties, kind of like the rights or the mechanism to be owned by the state. And remember, he spoke to the Chancellor at the time, which would have been
Wow.
What was Christ? What, I've just had a brain fart. What was the Chancellor to David Cameron? What was his name? The editor of the Evening Standard and that now. Yeah. Anyway, that guy. It's on the tip of my tongue. I'm gonna kick myself when I come off recording.
I try to forget Tory politicians on the whole.
Well, yeah, there is that. But anyway, he said, look, I've made all my money off these. Like, the state should own these songs now, and it should generate revenue for the state. And I think he got laughed out the room. If he was, I'm always a bit suspicious about that anecdote because although I love it, I was thinking if he really wanted it to do it that badly, he probably would have been more persistent. But I just love his politics. I think they're right on, and I love how he puts like you said, how he treated other members of the band and that kind of thing. And there's just a certain 90s kind of like cliche around the band now, I think, which means that the Beautiful South themselves aren't that well remembered, or I don't think people respect them that much. And like I said, they probably just made 5 albums too many, which probably didn't help. He should have probably gone solo a bit earlier. But although ironically, his solo career, like I've always followed him, and I bought the first 2 or 3 solo records, which I thought were good. But he didn't have any success with them until he got Jackie Abbott back in the group, who was
did he really?
one of the female singers of the Beautiful South in the height of their era.
She left to look after her kids, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. She absolutely did. And so there's a certain irony now that he's actually finally having solo success, but with that a little bit of that sound that the Beautiful South had. Although the new records, like I said, they've got lots of different music styles in there. He'll just do a country one, he'll do a like a gospel-y one, that kind of thing. So it's a bit different to that. I think the Beautiful South, musical similarities is probably a good way of putting it. They just pumped out the same record, 1 times too many.
I do like the fact that Paul Heaton's also responsible for getting some of the most smutty filth I've ever heard onto daytime radio.
Yeah,
it's just brilliant. We're running over time, so I'm going to play from a nice sentiment to this.
This was not supposed to be a monarchy, a hierarchy. I said useless and filled my chest with air. I'll say for worthy days. And I was so naive to believe that we were working together. We were on the same team. And I can't wait to see your face when you open to speak and got nothing to say to me. I can't think of a better way to throw it right back into your lying face.
So I thought we'd end with an actual post-breakup song. Do you know who that is? I honestly don't know if you would or not.
No, I didn't recognise it.
It's a band called the Dopamines, who I mentioned going to Brack Rock earlier and not seeing the Descendants. One of the things I really like about Brack Rock is I'm not the world's biggest skate punk fan, but each time I've been, there's been a band that I've come away from the festival really loving. And this band Dopamines. And if Adele has made money with breakup albums, I think the Dopamines have. And if John Grant is intellectually spiteful in his breakup stuff, the Dopamines are just heart on the sleeve, really fucking angry and upset. And they've done 3 or 4 albums on this theme now, but there's so much in. I find it quite unpleasant, the lyrics. Absolutely brilliant band. I mean, that sounded quite pop punk, and I mean they undeniably are, but they're pop punk but done very well. It's not very clean Blink 182 sort of pop punk, or it's much more Stiff Little Fingers. God, I'm gonna get slain for calling Stiff Little Fingers pop punk.
Yeah, I think they kind of are. Like I know what you mean. Like, it's a catchy chorus and that kind of thing.
But the lyrics in that, I was so naive to think we were in this together, and then it goes on, and then the last bit, I can't wait to see when you open your mouth and you've got nothing to say. Then I can't think of a better way of throwing it back in your lying face. I mean, the whole album's like that. I have to sort of listen to it in small chunks because it just puts me in a bad mood.
So you've seen them live then? What are they like?
Oh, just brilliant. So good. Really, really good and really funny as well. When I saw them at Brack Rock, it's such a weird festival. It's called Brack Rock Eco Fest, and it's in the woods. So you're always really close to the band. It's one of those festivals where there aren't really big, massive stages. It's like 30 quid for the weekend or something. It was an amazing thing to go to. And the bassist is in the middle of the stage. And somebody in the crowd started criticising his bass tone.
Christ.
And he really ran with it. He really kind of kept the conversation up. And the singer ended up going, "Look, mate," he's going, "they're an American band." He's saying, "Look, if you see us again, just don't give him anything that he can use, because he will not fucking shut up once he's onto one. But the singer was like, oh, they're clearly having a really good time. One of the nice things about seeing bands in Europe, especially if they're not bands, especially if they're bands who are in Europe for the first time, is just how much fun they're having.
Tell me about it. Yeah. So the Waxing Captors, we went on what I'm going to call a European tour. It was supposed to be 3 shows. One of them got cancelled, so it turned into 2 shows. It was more of a holiday where we just happened to play 2 shows. And we also forgot all of our CDs to sell and stuff, so it was a bit of a shambles. But it was the best. I don't know if I've listened to a bunch of your episodes, but I whether you've touched on this or not, I don't know. The bearing in mind we were unsigned band, not famous at all. No, had no real press. But you go from like begging to play a place in the UK, and in particular like London, like paying to play and all that kind of bullshit. And then suddenly you go to Europe where the band is king, and you're given like I suppose you'd call it a rider, but you're given food, you're given a place to stay, and the weirdest thing was we played this gig in Germany where we were the only band. There was us and a DJ, and I was like, "There's no local band like going to pull anyone in." And the German guys putting on the show like, "No, it's going to be fine. Don't worry." All the kids in this town just turned up because there was a show on, and they watched the show and enjoyed it and danced, and some of them danced, and then and then the DJ afterwards. It was phenomenal. It was so fantastic, and I tell you what, in Europe they just get it. They get having a good time. They get enjoying music. I think in the UK sometimes we're so. I can't put my finger on it. Is it because you play a London show, you can often see people looking at you thinking, "Am I supposed to like this? Is this any good?" Whereas in Europe, I find people are just much more open to having a party.
I asked Ricky Flagg, a mutual friend. I asked him what the biggest difference was with playing in Germany. And it's always specifically Germany. No bands have got anything bad to say about Germany. I mean, whole Europe's great, but it's always Germany in particular. And he said, in Germany, people will come up to you after you've played and ask you about your songs, ask you about specific lyrics or a specific chord change in the chorus. He said that does not happen anywhere else in the world. I think just that, it's that hyper focus kind of like, all right, you're going to play, well, we're going to suck it in. We're going to absorb every bit of it.
Yeah, you're going to play. I better listen. Yeah,
there's a brilliant there's an Against Me song called Americans Abroad, which is about touring, and there's a brilliant line in it where she describes touring as European vacation with my best friends, which I think is just a lovely way of putting it. But yeah, dopamines are in that, so they were having a great time, and the singer saying, just chatting to the crowd because it's Belgium, so everyone speaks English anyway, and he's going, anyway, enough of this lovely chat. We're going to play another song about my miserable breakup and that time I tried to shoot myself. Like, just starts ripping into a song. It's like, they're cracking band.
Oh, great.
Sadly, we're well over time. But
we are well over time now. I'm sorry, I was talking too much. But just last thing I'll say before I go. Thanks for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And the Chancellor, it's just popped in my head. The Chancellor that we were thinking about earlier was George Osborne. So, but you are excused for forgetting him.
Is he the one that looks like someone's been, filling a sausage and hasn't put enough meat in it to fill the skin?
He looks like a prefect. He definitely looks like a prefect.
Good God.
Yeah, good way of summing it up. No, everyone's excused for forgetting that name.
Right. Well, thank you ever so much for joining us, Luke. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. It's been. I always want to do an interesting take. Never, I don't want this podcast to be best 5 songs about sausages or whatever. And you chose a really good topic, and it took us on a really nice meandering story. And I think we've covered the whole of human existence and romance in just an hour and 14 seconds.
Yeah, an absolute pleasure. That's just my everyday, Andrew. That's just what I do.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks a lot. I'm going to say goodbye. Do you want to say goodbye?
Yeah, goodbye, everyone, and thanks for having me.